Jeff Bezos' Washington Post, that's the newspaper that brought you Democracy Dies in Darkness, has a new idea: get rid of freedom of speech. That's the case made in an op-ed by former Time magazine managing editor Richard Stengel. He says it's time to cancel America's 200-year experiment with free expression. It may have survived a civil war, 2 world wars, half a century of communist subversion. But the First Amendment, he claims, has outlived its usefulness. Why? Because Stengel is worried that in a marketplace of ideas, the wrong ideas are winning. According to Stengel, it's time for the United States to start passing so-called hate speech laws. Americans shouldn't derive their standards for rights from the founders or from our own history or from even what our people want. Instead, we ought to be taking our tips from Arab dictatorships. This is a direct quote. Even the most sophisticated Arab diplomats that I dealt with did not understand why the First Amendment allows someone to burn a Quran. Why, they asked me, would you ever want to protect that? It's a fair question. End quote. Stengel's wording tells you a lot about the way he thinks. Arab diplomats are sophisticated. Perhaps they went to the same corrupt schools that he did, or maybe they eat at the same restaurants. If they don't like free speech, then it doesn't matter if all of them represent corrupt, backward autocracies. Their opinions are worth listening to. Chinese diplomats are sophisticated, too. They read books and attend symphonies. Maybe Stengel will listen to their views on human rights next. Because that's, in the end, what this is really about. To Stengel and people like Stengel, only respectable people, that is, members of a coastal privileged opinion-setting class, are allowed freedom of thought. Can you imagine if you tried to circumscribe Richard Stengel's speech? You're not allowed to say that, Richard Stengel. We're going to throw you in prison. Would he be for abridging the First Amendment then? No. But in his view, the rest of the country can only debate on the terms set by him and his friends. But right now, that's not happening. America's elites have screwed up the country, so ordinary people aren't listening to them anymore. Most people don't care what Richard Stengel thinks. Does Time magazine even exist anymore? Probably not. It doesn't deserve to. It was garbage. Stengel complains that free speech is allowing, quote, falsehoods to spread online. He says that free speech is undermining tolerance and enabling discrimination. That's a smokescreen. It's Stengel who is pushing intolerance and discrimination. He's literally advocating against free speech. But he needs intolerance and discrimination because that's the only way he and his friends can keep controlling you. So, recent public polling on the question of free speech shows that an awful lot of young Americans don't believe in the First Amendment. That's not surprising. Schools have been infected with an extremist woke ideology that attacks the idea of freedom of speech. And by the way, it's not just in reading or social studies. Even math is prey to the politics of the left. In the city of Seattle, educators are pursuing a new ethnic studies framework that adds racial politics, radical racial politics, to multiplication and division. The framework teaches children that math is subjective and, of course, is a tool used by some races to oppress others. Jason Nichols is professor of African-American Studies at the University of Maryland. He joins us tonight. Whatever happened to the party of science? So if you get to the point where you don't even believe in math, why should I listen to you?
Well, no, first of all, we're not saying, I don't think anyone in the world is saying that math of itself is racist. It's how it's applied. Like with anything, we can say, science can be applied in ways that can be racially biased. Math certainly can be used as praxis or as a way to teach subjects using ethnic studies.
Well, a coffee cup can be used as a deadly weapon, but we don't teach kids that it's dangerous because it's not inherently dangerous. It can be misused because people are bad, right? They're fallen, they're screwed up.
I think math is a little bit different than a coffee cup.
But math is not subjective. Math is objective.
Math is not subjective. But again, I think people are missing the point here. What they're trying to do in the Seattle schools is teach kids math and have them learn better. And they've seen results by using this ethnic studies framework. For example, one of the things that happened in San Francisco, and they studied this at Stanford, is that they saw when they brought ethnic studies into the subjects, into their various subjects, they saw a 21% increase in attendance, and grade point averages went up by 1.4 points.
Okay, but I mean, that makes me sad because we both know that's not real. I mean,
how is that not real?
Talking about racism doesn't make you better at math. Okay, so let's look at the countries that really do score well at math.
Showing how you can apply math is what makes you better at math.
Countries that are serious about math, Singapore, for example, or mainland China, much higher math scores than we have. Do you think that they infuse their math lessons with lectures about racism?
No, they may not, but that's
They may not. Oh, no, they don't. They're laughing at us because they know how pathetic this is.
Something tells me you're not privy to the curriculum over in Singapore. But
I'm privy to their attitudes, which is one of deadly seriousness, where kids have to learn or else they're going to fall behind.
And I think ethnic studies can be deadly serious. The point is that if it works, why would we argue against something that's been proven to work?
But it hasn't. So you're saying that.
But it has. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Talking about racism while teaching math. 1.4%. Okay. So,
increase in grade point average. 21% increase in attendance.
But, I mean, these are schools that, in a lot of cases, state of California, for example, the overwhelming majority of kids aren't at grade level in math. So the schools are terrible. The teachers are inept. The system is a joke.
Sure.
Are these...
We're not going to disagree that there are things that could be fixed in addition.
So here's my question. On objective tests of ability, not whether the teacher's pleased with you, but whether or not you can understand a mathematical formula, for example.
Absolutely.
Talking about racism will increase the students' ability.
That is what was seen in the 2016 study from Stanford.
Gosh, why didn't we think of this before?
You tell me.
You're breaking my heart because we both know that in 5 years, Seattle isn't going to be leading the nation in math scores.
Well, what we want to see is improvement. And we have seen it before. They're trying new ways to teach young children of all different backgrounds about math and science and many other things.
Last question. Now, Singapore is a ethnically diverse place.
Sure.
Why don't we just copy what they do if we really want our kids to be good at math? Why not just go with
Well, I think there have been many different attempts at trying to make...
They're not trying that in Seattle because it's too hard.
No, I don't think that's any harder than implementing what they're implementing. Okay. They've tried many different ways. No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top. They're looking for ways that work, and they've seen evidence that this works.
Well, none of that stuff worked. We know that. We can agree on that. Professor, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Tucker. Go Nats.
Covington Catholic high schooler Nick Sandman nearly had his life ruined for smiling at a man beating a drum in his face. Now there's new hope for his lawsuit against the Washington Post, this country's